James Franklin is out. That is a big deal. And we talked about it last week on the show. You can find the video that we did. It was called Divorce, ? With James Franklin and a little thought cloud of Virginia Tech logo out there. And we thought, this is probably where it's heading for James Franklin and Penn State. Even though this guy is the second most winningest coach in Penn State history, it just kind of felt like it was kind of coming undone right after another disappointing loss at home to Oregon in overtime. You think, all right, Drew Aller's back, Katron Allen's back, Nicholas Singleton's back. We invested in the receivers. It's year 2 of Andy Kotelnicki's system. We got the defensive coordinator. We got everything we could possibly want. This is our year. And at the halfway point, you're 3-3 with losses not only to Oregon, but to a winless UCLA at the time with the interim head coach, in Northwestern at home. And then your quarterback is out for the season as well. So Penn State is sitting there and they're looking at the college football calendar and they're thinking to themselves, okay, how does this set up? December 3rd is National Signing Day. The next month, January 2nd is when the transfer portal window opens. It's open for 2 weeks until the 16th. You think about conference championships, that's December 6th as well. We better get a move on it. And we love James Franklin. Thank you for everything that you have done. But this is a wounded deer right now that we need to put out of his misery in order for us to move on. And to me, that's where Penn State is. It really wasn't one of those things where I think traditionally you would have seen this maybe drag on to late November, maybe early December. That's not the case in new age college football. And Pat Kraft, who became AD of Penn State back in 22, wants to put his touch on this place. And you think about James Franklin, what he did, 104 and 45 in 11 seasons, 1 Big Ten championship, 7 New Year's 6 appearances, and a CFP appearance last season. We always talk about the line going from good to great is very, very difficult. And Penn State's right there, right? You've had Ohio State, you've had Michigan, now you throw Oregon into the Big Ten as well. And Penn State is one of those teams. They're jockeying for 3rd or 4th position. They've had difficulty getting past Ohio State, winning the big games. We've talked about James Franklin's record in the big games. I talked about Penn State being a team that feels to me like they're always on their heels, right? And that was really kind of what we felt under James Franklin. A lot of good moments, not a lot of great moments. And I think the fan base, I don't want to speak for him, genuinely thankful for where he was able to take the program. Now it's able to take the next step. So what does that look like, right? Because you have a lot invested in this program. I mentioned the continuity that they had, but they spent big on Andy Kotelnicki. They spent big on defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. So you think about Penn State and that level of investment that they've had. It's been there as of recently. But now it's about where do you turn? Where do you go from good to great? And I talked about that AD, Pat Kraft, right? He's the guy that's going to be in charge with making a decision. And if you watch College Football Insiders on CBS Sports and you listen to Chris Hummer and you listen to John Talty and you listen to Brandon Marcello, you hear those guys. The top name is going to be Matt Rhule at Nebraska. The issue with that, in my opinion, is Matt Rhule is right where he wants to be in Lincoln in year 3. In terms of a quarterback going into his second year, is going to have another year before he can declare for the NFL draft and Dylan Raiola. And you think about that team, if Nebraska, who's sitting at 5-1 right now, were to go 4-2 over their next 6 games, they'd be 9-3. That's exactly where you want to be if you're Matt Rhule. Having the opportunity to win 10 games in Lincoln, when's the last time they were able to do that? The level of investment in their facilities, their level of investment in their roster. And people can say, well, Nebraska is a more difficult place to recruit to than Penn State. But how much of a difference are we talking about here? Right? And now you look at the Big Ten, you look at Ohio State, you look at Oregon. Who was that third team? Michigan, typically, right now, going through it with a freshman quarterback, just lost on the road in Los Angeles to USC. Penn State now going through a coaching search. If you're Matt Rhule and you're looking at this situation, even given the relationship that you have with the AD going back to Temple, is it worth it for you to restart the clock and go to a place where they just fired a head coach? And I understand the expectations going into this season that did a pretty darn good job. Didn't do a great job, but did a good job. You know the expectation is to win the national championship. And the other thing here at play, guys, is that Matt Rhule played linebacker at Penn State. The first job he ever had as a volunteer assistant was at Penn State. He's from New York. There are a lot of ties there for Matt Rhule. But how different are Matt Rhule and James Franklin? And is it enough to say, yeah, like this is our bona fide guy. This is going to be the guy that puts us over the top. But how many of those guys are there if you're Penn State? And we talked about the danger of this situation a little bit last week when we talked about James Franklin and Penn State heading for a divorce. It's kind of scary for both sides, right? And I think it's necessary for both sides to move on. But in terms of what's next, both James Franklin and Penn State need to be really, really careful about what program and what head coach they decide to really head into a marriage to next. So the name that you will hear will be Matt Rhule. I'm skeptical. Now, for a guy that played there for Matt Rhule, the connection, working with the AD at Temple, it's all going to be there. And if you're Pat Kraft, you have some level of conviction or confidence level that Matt Rhule would be interested in this job. The other part of this is Nebraska, if they're heading for a 9-win season right now, which they're sitting at 5-1, they are not going to make this easy for Matt Rhule. Nebraska's invested. One of the most invested fan bases there is out there, one of the most invested programs there is out there. They've been struggling for a long time, and now they're in year 3. They finally got the guy, and they're having some semblance of success, and they're competitive in the Big Ten again. And you're going to get up and leave. I think Nebraska's got a really good pitch to keep Matt Rhule here. And I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for Matt Rhule to leave, especially given the unique power vacuum, and maybe that's too strong of language, but the unique opportunity that the Penn State vacancy gives a program like Nebraska. Maybe we're not thinking about it the right way and thinking about it in the shoes of Matt Rhule. I get it. Dream job. Let's take a step back. 30,000 feet. Is this really right for me? Another challenge. Got to restart the clock. I mean, this stuff takes time, sweat equity, right? And for Matt Rhule and his family, that's another thing that they got to jump through again. So who are some realistic options for Penn State? I think the name at the top of the list, obviously for a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of it really comes down to recency bias, but you have to think about Curt Cignetti coming off the biggest win in his career at Oregon. Oregon really the gold standard for what we believe college football is becoming and what it is at this point with a head coach who's young and dynamic and gets it in Dan Lanning. And Indiana, as a top 10 ranked team, went into Eugene and won that game by 10 points. Fernando Mendoza, a great complementary effort on both the offense and defensive side of the football. Curt Cignetti shows you what he's about. And this team is so well coached. I'm going to talk about him in our next segment. But they emulate their head coach. I always talk about a football team emulating their head coach. And there are all those memes out there of Curt Cignetti and videos about there just stone-faced in the fourth quarter and his team's up by more than 4 touchdowns. That's him. That's Saban-level detail, Saban-level intensity. Just to everything we do means something. Curt Cignetti has that. And this guy has a chip on his shoulder, but he handles it the right way, man. And I love the way that his team plays. So if you're Penn State, to me, Curt Cignetti, more than anybody out there, would be the home run hire. That's the guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, played quarterback at West Virginia. That's the guy that I want. Because guess what? Penn State's talented. Oregon's talented as anybody in the country. Curt Cignetti, with almost 70% of his rosters being made up of transfers, has put together one of the most complete teams in the country at Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana, known as a basketball school for the second consecutive year as one of the best football programs in the country. That's Curt Cignetti. So if I was Penn State, that would be the guy that I would circle. Now, if you get outside the realm of Cignetti and Cignetti says, you know what, I can build something here at Indiana that I'm building already that will never be duplicated. I'm 2 years into this thing, and I have a hard time believing that there's going to be anybody else out there that is going to be able to live up to what I built here in 2 years. To go to Penn State, and now we got to thread the needle. I keep saying that. We got to thread the needle between good and great. It's not like the bottom fell out. It's like, hey, man, we're trying to win national championships. They were saying fire James Franklin after he lost to Oregon. Guy was 1 game away from winning, 1 game away from going to a national championship last year. That's where you're living. So if you're Curt Cignetti, he's probably sitting there and saying, you know what? Enticing. I love it. I know you're committed to it. I'm already getting paid $9 million a year. I'm okay. And this is where it really gets interesting for Penn State, because what happens if you miss out on Cignetti? What happens if you miss out on Rhule? And I'm not saying they will. They might be in a really good spot to land either of those guys. But who's next? Right? Who are the guys? Is it Matt Campbell at Iowa State? And this is what it comes down to, like elevating the ceiling of what you already had. James Franklin was really good at a lot of things. I don't know if he was elite at one thing. So who's got that elite trait or elite traits that they have flashed as a coach that you would want to take a swing at? Matt Campbell, I think he's a good developer of talent. I think they've done a good job of talent ID and development at Iowa State. I think he's done a remarkable job of raising the ceiling and the floor of that place. I think he's gone through peaks and valleys there. He's reinvented himself. They've adjusted to the new age of college football, and you see what Iowa State can be. If I was Penn State, though, I'm not entirely comfortable with the whole picture of Matt Campbell. Kind of reminds me a lot of what we just had. So what's different out there? 2 guys that immediately come to mind for me. Matt Campbell's in this category as well. It's just different landscape. How about Brent Key at Georgia Tech? And people are saying, well, Brent Key played at Georgia Tech. He did. But if you think that this is one of the best jobs in the country, you better be able to pull away a guy like Brent Key. And Georgia Tech has the makings to be a team that is a consistent contender in the ACC. I know Brent Key believes that. There's something special about coaching at the program that you played at as a player, but to have the opportunity to fit Brent Key's style of coaching, toughness, discipline, just a competitor want to, at a place like Penn State, that makes a lot of sense to me. And Georgia Tech, the way they're recruiting right now, the way they've used the portal, you give Brent Key those type of resources, that's a fascinating fit, right? Where's he at? What's that look like? The other guy in a very similar situation would be Clark Lea. Clark Lea's got Vandy in a position where they belong in the SEC. Like this is not just a one-off Vandy year. They played 4 quarters with Alabama. They got LSU next week. This is a team that nobody in the SEC wants to see on their schedule. Young, innovative, adaptive head coach, critical thinker. If you're Penn State, what are the qualities that you're looking for in a head coach? What are the things that you think you lacked that limited you from getting to the next stop? That's important. So whether you hire Matt Rhule or Curt Cignetti, I think those are the types of conversations you need to have. Hey, not just, hey, listen, he played here, he knows the area, he wants to be here, he's got the track record. Great. But this game changes year in and year out. And we owe it to ourselves to vet the next wave of up-and-coming coaches that we think could potentially be a fit here. Dan Lanning really came out of nowhere for Oregon. And you think about that hire, I mean, he's one of the most young, dynamic head coaches in all of college football, if not the most complete coach in college football. And it was Oregon out there doing their due diligence and say, you know what, that type of culture that Kirby Smart has built, we feel like he's gotten a guy in the building that can emulate that out here and put his own spin on things. Who's that guy for Penn State? Could it be Brent Key? Could it be Clark Lea? I think you have two really good cases for both of those guys. And if you're Penn State and you're Pat Kraft, dude, show your stuff a little bit, right? I mean, great opportunity for you to sell Penn State and be able to go pluck somebody. That's the name of the game. Pluck somebody. When people say, oh, he would never leave. Well, how good are you? How bad do you want it? I know you want it bad, but how bad do you want it? And how good's your sales pitch? And how good of a situation can this be for those two guys where they have to look at it and say, you know what, I can't pass that up. That's how you have to make it. So realistic, Matt Rhule at the top of the list for the obvious reasons. Curt Cignetti would be my number one. 17-2 at Indiana. Insane. Matt Campbell would be in there. I think that's your high floor you feel good about. But I think you're looking at the mirror of James Franklin there. Two guys that I'm absolutely calling, Brent Key, Clark Lea. Other guys, Mike Elko, Texas A&M. Listen, Aggies fans, I get it. Very unlikely. Wild card bucket. He's from New Jersey. Fits the area geographically. These are the things that I'm looking at. It's no different than when you're trying to identify players for your programs. You're looking at the geographical roots, which guys fit your teams. And Elko's doing great at A&M. He's got all the backing in the world. That's only going to continue to improve if he continues to win. I wouldn't leave if I were him. But you can understand why I put him on this list. Manny Diaz at Duke, has he done enough? I like Manny Diaz at Duke. I think that's where he's at this point of his career. Fran Brown, Syracuse, same. Let's continue to grow. Let's continue to develop. I think the Penn State job for those two, too big. Other guys, I put them in the category. Category. Dan Mullen, UNLV. Here's my thing about Dan Mullen. Somebody is going to figure out and buck the group of five recycled head coach trend with Dan Mullen. And one of these Power Four teams is going to look at Dan Mullen and say, what happened at Florida? Where did it go wrong? Dan Mullen is a very, very good football coach. Dan Mullen, the CEO, in terms of talent acquisition, in terms of that day-to-day, he needs a front office. He needs a Joey McGuire type of relationship with James Blanchard, his GM. And he needs somebody that he can empower in his front office and say, hey, this is what I want to prioritize at the quarterback position. Here's what's important to me. Here are the traits that I desire. Financially, I need somebody that I can lean on, balance out the roster, help me balance out the roster other places, especially defense. Here are my blind spots from where I've been a head coach. I know I can do this at a high level, but put me in the best position to succeed. Like if I was Virginia Tech, I'd be taking a hard look at Dan Mullen because we know Dan Mullen can coach. I mean, the guy won 8-9 games consistently at Mississippi State. Undefeated at UNLV. Compare him to Billy Napier in Gainesville, a lot more successful. So Dan Mullen, for all those blemishes, and they're real ones, those things are correctable with the right AD, the right administration, and saying, hey, listen, we're going to have a little bit of balance of power. This is your show. But in terms of roster management oversight, this is going to be a collective decision on how we fill out these spots. So Dan Mullen won't end up as the head coach at Penn State. I doubt it. But this is a good time to reintroduce him back into the coaching carousel because I think in this day and age, he's an intriguing guy. Alex Galesh, South Florida. I don't think he's got enough pop for this one. He's worked in the Big Ten. John Summerall, Tulane, same deal. Not the right jobs for them. Can't see it category. Jed Fish, Washington. Jed Fish is like, to me, always just looking for the next thing. And Washington's a good job. But I think he's always out there with the ear to the ground, and he's a good head coach, but I think he's probably thinking what's next. Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State, another one of those guys, an alumni. Hard to see him leaving. Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri, from that Southwest region. That would be an interesting one. Off the wall a little bit. And if you're Drinkwitz, it's kind of similar to what we're talking about with Cignetti. Like, why would you leave? You got that place humming. So that's where we are right now. Penn State is in a really unique situation where they fired their coach, not even at the halfway point of October. And this guy was a good coach, not a great coach. And I understand why they did it. But what's realistic? Is it Matt Rhule? Because Matt Rhule, like I said, has a chance to go 4-2, 5-1. And then you're talking about Nebraska accomplishing something they hadn't accomplished in a really long time there in Lincoln. And year 3 of Matt Rhule, that's a money year. And guess what? I mean, we saw Bo Pelini get fired after 9 wins every year. But Matt Rhule, the way that he's building it, that can be a more attractive destination. Curt Cignetti, would he leave? Right? So those two names, let's focus on that. I think that will be the focal point of this search. But if it gets outside of that, it gets a little hairy for Penn State. And what I mean by hairy, it doesn't mean that they won't be able to nab a really good head coach. It just means that everybody out there is going to have some type of question mark. It's like, yeah, I like Brent Key, but how's he going to fit? What's that going to look like? I like Clark Lea, but this is a big step up, right? They're going to be those questions that exist. And until they go out and prove it every week, that's where we're going to be. And the standard right now for Penn State and what Pat Kraft has set in motion is a national championship for the first time since 1986. James Franklin losing the Northwestern game, I think has set him back. I think that almost, crazy as it sounds, kind of takes him out of the Virginia Tech job. That's a really bad stain, man. I can get past UCLA. That's one game. I can't get past 2 of them. That to me tells me you lost the team. You have one of the most talented rosters in college football. I thought this top 3 talented roster in college football with the experience. And you have 2 absolutely can't have losses. 1, given your track record, I can give you. 2, same year. To me, that says you're getting paid $59 million in this buyout. Take a vacation, and let's revisit this in 12 months because you got a good resume, but now you got to let the stink wear off. And that's where we are.